Red and blue lights exploded across my front yard as two patrol cars boxed in my driveway, sirens off, but tension loud enough to shake the air. Delilah, our HOA president in her neon sundress, was already screaming at the officers, pointing at my blacked-out F350 like it was a felony on wheels. Arrest him. He's violating HOA standards. Neighbors gathered instantly, phones out, waiting to see if I'd get hauled off my own property. The officer turned to me. "Sir, you got proof you're not in this HOA." "Oh," I said, handing him the folder I'd been saving for months. "I've got proof." What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that the real problem here wasn't my truck. It was their entire neighborhood, and what I'd just uncovered beneath it. Delilah didn't wait for the police cars to clear the road. The minute their tires touched pavement, she marched straight toward me, heels, stabbing into the gravel like she wanted to nail the earth into place. She yanked a violation notice from her leather folder and slapped it onto my mailbox so hard the metal rang. "That's your third fine this week," she said. "And trust me, Garrett, patience is running out." One personality line max. Her smile was the kind that only shows up when someone enjoys having power. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "My community does not tolerate disorder." One motive line max. Control wasn't just a rule for her, it was an identity. I kept my hands in my pockets, steadying myself. I'd moved here after a brutal divorce into my grandfather's old farmhouse, 2 acres older than her entire subdivision. I only wanted quiet space and a place to rebuild. But Delilah saw my workshop, my trucks, my dog, and decided I was a threat to her curated kingdom. She circled my F350 like she was inspecting contraband. "Commercial vehicles are banned. Your barn violates aesthetic standards." And that she pointed at Rusty, wagging his tail, is an unregistered animal. I almost laughed. "Ma'am, I'm not in your HOA." Her eyes hardened. "Not yet, but you will be, one way or another." Behind her, the officers pulled away. And that was the moment I realized Delilah wasn't done. She was just warming up. The first note showed up before sunrise, taped to my barn door, flapping in the breeze like a threat pretending to be paperwork. Immediate correction required. No signature, but the perfume smell gave it away. 2 hours later, another violation appeared on my trailer hitch. By noon, Delilah was doing slow drive-bys with her phone angled at my property like a paparazzi hunting scandal. I'd seen tactics like this on job sites: pressure, first paperwork, second, usually from developers trying to push out old owners. But this land wasn't some abandoned parcel. It was my family's older than her, HOA, older than Willow Brook, older than any of the manicured lawns she worshipped. When the third notice showed up, this one accusing me of unlicensed mechanical activity, I finally caught her reflection in my shop window. She was recording me tuning a lawnmower engine, zooming in like she'd spotted criminal activity. "Smile, Garrett," she called. "Documentation is everything." She wasn't wrong, just not for the reasons she thought. The ambush came 3 days later. I was elbow deep in a carburetor when a county inspection truck rumbled up my driveway, followed by Delilah's white Mercedes creeping behind it like a proud escort. The inspector, sweating before he even stepped out, unrolled a tape measure without introducing himself. "Multiple complaints," he muttered, already measuring the distance between my trailer and the barn. Delilah stood behind him, recording every second, her sunglasses, hiding the satisfaction on her face. "Be thorough," she said, like she was coaching a student she expected to fail. Because I worked from home, I caught every move, every whispered suggestion. She fed him every angle she told him to film. But her plan had a fatal flaw. I spent 15 years in construction. Zoning laws were second nature. "Inspector," I said calmly, "what's the official classification on this parcel?" He flipped through his paperwork, sweat dotting the pages. Agricultural, residential, mixed use, which permits equipment storage," I added, "and mechanical work during legal hours." He blinked, looked at my tools, looked at Delilah, then shut his clipboard. No violations. Her jaw tightened, sunglasses unable to hide the fury. But that wasn't the part that bothered me. It was how rehearsed the whole thing felt. The first police call hit that same week. Officer Martinez showed up looking uncomfortable, reading from a note that didn't sound like his words at all. Anonymous report of possible drug manufacturing. He sniffed the air like he expected a meth lab to explode behind me. All he smelled was carb cleaner and WD-40. 15 minutes later, he apologized and left. The second call came that afternoon. Aggressive dog threatening children. Rusty was belly up in the grass, getting his stomach scratched by the neighbor's kid when Martinez pulled in. He didn't even bother writing a report, just shook his head. By the fourth call, he didn't get out of his car. He just rolled down the window and said, same voice every time, different names, off the record, start documenting everything. That landed harder than the accusations. I'd already lost one life in Atlanta, marriage gone, assets gone, future gone. I wasn't losing this land too. Not to an HOA president with a god complex. So I started a log. Every time her SUV crawled past my driveway, every bogus report, every threat disguised as a community standard, and every entry made one thing clearer. These weren't random complaints. Delilah was escalating, and she wasn't planning to stop. The real storm hit on a Tuesday. I was welding a cracked trailer hitch when 3 black SUVs rolled into my driveway like a government convoy. Out stepped a full roster: environmental inspector, building code officer, fire marshal, even someone from the health department clutching a clipboard like a shield. Mr. Mackenzie, the lead inspector, said multiple formal complaints have triggered a comprehensive safety review. Formal, meaning someone signed their name, meaning this wasn't anonymous anymore. They swarmed my property with instruments that beeped, clicked, and scraped, testing soil, checking fluid storage, scanning my barn like I was running a secret refinery. Delilah's SUV idled at the end of the road, phone raised, waiting to film the takedown she'd scripted in her head. But my construction years saved me again. My septic was certified. My fluids were stored to code. My fire extinguishers were dated and tagged. Every system passed with numbers so clean, the inspectors looked irritated. "Everything here is compliant," the lead officer finally said, packing up. Not disappointed, defeated. I watched the SUVs roll away, gravel crunching under their tires, and one thought hit me. Someone with real pull had ordered this. And if Delilah had that kind of access, she wasn't acting alone. The tipping point came with a single phone call from the surveyor. "Garrett, you need to see this." Bobby Hendricks laid the map across my tailgate paper, still warm from the sun. His finger traced a line, my property line, then shifted 3 feet onto Delilah's perfectly manicured lawn. Her fence, on your land. Her flower beds, on your land. That fancy garden shed, completely on your land. For a moment, all I heard was the cicadas whining in the trees. Every fine she'd slapped on me, every violation she'd shoved in my face while she had been trespassing on my property for years. That evening, I sent her a certified notice. 30 days to move everything. The next morning, the siren started, not police, Delilah. She stormed up my driveway, waving the letter like it was radioactive. But this time she wasn't alone. Bradley, her city councilman husband, stepped forward with a smile built in a courtroom. "We can resolve this peacefully," he said, offering me a folded check for $15,000. "Just sign a boundary agreement, drop your claims. Everyone wins." Then came the real message, soft as poison: refuse. And permits get delayed, inspections get messy, life becomes difficult. They didn't know my phone was recording every word. They also didn't know what my attorney had just uncovered about Willowbrook. And once I saw it, I realized Delilah's fence was the least of their problems. The HOA clubhouse had never been this full. 200 residents packed shoulder-to-shoulder, voices, buzzing news cameras perched in the corners like vultures, waiting for a headline. Delilah stood at the podium in a pastel blazer, smiling the way people do right before they lie under oath. "Neighbors," she began, "we're here tonight because Mr. Mackenzie has created ongoing disruptions." "Liar," someone shouted from the middle rows. Another voice fired back. "What about the fines you gave us for our mailbox color?" Delilah's smile tightened. She cleared her throat. "Please, let me finish. Mr. Mackenzie has filed a baseless property claim that threatens our home values." That was my cue. I stepped forward, Sarah Blackwood at my side, thick legal folder in hand. The room shifted as if the air moved with us. "Baseless," I said. "Let's talk about baseless." The news cameras swung toward me. Delilah's hands trembled on the podium. I set the survey map on the front table, flattening the edges with my palms. "Your HOA president has been fining me for months," I said, "while her fence and shed sit entirely on my land." Gasps spread like a spark catching dry grass. "And that," I added, locking eyes with Delilah, "is the smallest problem this neighborhood has." The room went silent as I opened the second folder. The one Sarah had labeled, "Do not reveal until necessary." Tonight was necessary. "Let's move past fences," I said, unfolding a series of documents across the table. This, I tapped a faded 1962 deed, "is the mineral rights agreement your developer never disclosed." The crowd leaned in. Even the news crew stepped closer. Sarah spoke next, voice crisp, deliberate. "Pinnacle Properties never acquired subsurface rights before building Willowbrook Estates. Legally, every basement, every septic line, every utility trench sits on land still owned by the Mackenzie family." A wave of startled murmurs rippled across the room. Sarah continued laying out bankruptcy filings. And Pinnacle went bankrupt in 2018, which means their unfinished contracts may have reverted to the original owner, Mr. Mackenzie. Delilah shook her head violently. This is ridiculous. My husband approved those permits. Wrong move. I hit play on my phone. Bradley's voice filled the clubhouse speakers. Permits can get delayed. Life gets difficult for troublemakers. Take the settlement and walk away. The room exploded. People stood shouting, questions demanding answers, crowding around the documents as cameras zoomed in for close-ups. Delilah stumbled back from the podium, pale eyes darting like a cornered animal. Her narrative was collapsing, and everyone in Willowbrook was watching it happen in real time. Bradley tried to grab the microphone, but the crowd surged forward, voices rising, cameras flashing, decades of quiet resentment breaking open all at once. You took bribes, you approved fraudulent permits, our deeds might be worthless because of you. The city councilman, who once strutted through ribbon cuttings, now looked like a kid caught shoplifting. Sweat rolled down his temples as he held up his hands. Everyone calm down, this is being taken out of context. No, Sarah said, stepping beside me. This is the context. She held up the official notice we filed that morning. Effective immediately, the court has accepted the quiet title action. Every homeowner in Willowbrook will now be formally notified of the dispute, and Mr. Mackenzie is legally recognized as having preserved subsurface rights. The room erupted again. Delilah lunged for the microphone, voice cracking. This man is trying to ruin our community, lady, someone yelled. You ruined it, Mrs. Finley stood. Calm, steady, devastating. Delilah, you've bullied people for years, but threatening our property titles, that's your legacy. Jake Morrison stepped forward next. And threatening me, a combat veteran on live TV, that's your husband's legacy. The board members huddled, whispering urgently. Then the eldest cleared his throat. Effective immediately, Delilah Thornfield is removed as HOA president. And Bradley, your actions are being reported to the State Ethics Commission. Delilah's knees buckled. Bradley stared at the floor jaw, trembling. Their kingdom fell in less than 10 minutes. And Willowbrook watched every brick crumble. The shouting slowly thinned into a heavy, uneasy quiet. People weren't sitting anymore. They were clustering in small knots, gripping paperwork, whispering the kinds of questions that changed the course of entire neighborhoods. Cameras kept rolling, catching every stunned expression. The air felt thick like the first breath after a tornado tears through a town and finally moves on. I closed the folder and stepped back, letting the room absorb the truth. The weight of months, fines, inspections, threats, police calls seemed to lift off my shoulders and disperse into the crowd that had once watched me with suspicion. Now they were looking at Delilah the way people look at something that fooled them for too long. Mrs. Finley approached first. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. Garrett, thank you. You saved us from something we didn't even know was happening. Behind her, the Johnsons nodded relief, softening years of quiet frustration. Even the Hendersons, normally stoic, stepped closer. I wasn't a hero. I was just a man who refused to be pushed out of land that had carried my family's name for generations. But the gratitude in their eyes settled something deep in my chest, something steadier than anger, warmer than vindication. Across the room, the HOA board gathered in a tight circle. Their president, new interim nervous, cleared his throat and addressed the residents. We'll be opening a full audit of every action taken under the Thornfield administration. Effective immediately, all pending fines are frozen. And until legal matters are resolved, HOA enforcement is suspended. A wave of relief passed through the residents loud enough to hear in their exhale. Then came the part no one expected. The county commissioner, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. His voice was measured, but there was resignation in it. Mr. Mackenzie, the evidence you presented tonight will trigger a state-level review. Multiple agencies will be investigating the development, the permitting process, and the conduct of everyone involved. His gaze flicked to Bradley, who looked suddenly much smaller in his expensive suit. This is no longer an HOA issue. It's a government issue. Residents murmured, not fearful now, but resolute. A community beginning to see itself as something stronger than one person's control. I lifted my hands to quiet the room. Look, I'm not here to bring chaos into your lives. None of you built this mess. None of you caused it. You bought homes believing the paperwork was solid. My fight is with the people who cut corners and profited from it. Eyes softened. Shoulders eased. People listened. I'm not here to take anyone's house, I continued. I'm here to fix a problem the right way, fairly, legally, and with all of you involved. If we cooperate, there's a path forward that protects everyone. That's when something shifted. A man from the back, someone I've never spoken to, stepped forward and extended his hand. You've got my support, Garrett. Then another. And another. hands shaking mine one after another like dominoes falling toward hope instead of fear. Even Jake moved closer, squeezing my shoulder. "Told you she'd overplay her hand," he said under his breath. Delilah hunched in her chair, eyes red, shoulders shaking. No one went to her, not even Bradley. His phone buzzed nonstop, calls he didn't want to answer, consequences already hunting him down. For once, he didn't have the confidence to pretend everything was under control. As residents continued to gather around the survey maps, I felt a quiet moment settle over me, the kind that reaches deeper than victory. A moment of belonging earned, not granted. Sarah stood at my side, arms crossed, a small smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. "You handled that well. I didn't do it alone." "No," she said, glancing at the room, full of people finally talking to one another instead of hiding behind rules. "You did something harder. You brought light into a place that's been dark for a long time." A beat of silence passed between us. So she added, ready to rebuild this neighborhood. I looked around, neighbors cooperating, misconceptions dissolving, people already planning next steps instead of panicking. The air felt lighter. The tension that once choked the room had thinned into something almost hopeful. "Yeah," I said quietly, "I think we're ready." Outside porch lights flickered across Willowbrook, glowing warm against the night. Homes that once looked identical now felt connected, fragile, imperfect, but finally honest. And as the clubhouse doors opened and residents spilled into the humid Tennessee air, I felt it hit me. This wasn't the end of a war. It was the beginning of a community.